The BMW E24 6 Series, produced from 1976 to 1989, marked BMW's entry into the luxury Grand Tourer segment. Designed by Paul Brock, it succeeded the E9 coupes and was eventually replaced by the E63 6 Series over 14 years later in 2003. The E24 was developed as a more modern and safer successor to the E9 series, built between 1968 and 1975. Unlike its predecessor, the E24 featured a B-pillar for improved structural integrity, and the initial design was based on the E9 3-liter CS, but was rejected by BMW executive Bob Lutz, leading to a new design that emphasized both aesthetics and functionality. Production began with the 633 CSI in January 1976, followed by the carbureted 630 CS in February 1976. Initially, bodies were manufactured by Karmann, but due to quality concerns, production was moved in-house to BMW's Dingolfing plant in August of 1977. The E24 featured a long hood, short rear deck and iconic shark nose front end. The car featured distinctive quad headlights and kidney grills which emphasized its BMW identity, just like with the 5 Series and 7 Series of the time. Most of the cars had different rims to choose from, as well as the BMW spoke wheels, which were many enthusiasts love. Early models had chrome bumpers, which were later replaced with integrated plastic bumpers to meet safety regulations. The inside offered a driver-focused layout with high-quality materials. The dashboard's ventilation system was truly unique, with a full vent-like line across the entire dashboard, with 6 vents in the dashboard itself in total. In the rear side of the car, there was space for 2 passengers, which were adorned with comfort, with very sporty seats, although not having the most space because of the car being a coupé. Standard features included power windows, air conditioning, even a fully leather interior, and premium audio systems. Post-1982 models, when there was a facelift, saw updates from a facelift like a redesigned dashboard and improved radios and other electronic parts. In 1982 or in 1983 for the US, the E24 was updated with parts from the E28 5 series, resulting changes to exterior styling, engines, chassis, suspension, electronics, and the interior. The rust protection of the car was also improved considerably along with this facelift. All E24 models were equipped with an inline-6 engine, primarily from the M30 family as well as some S family engines. Initially with a 4-speed manual or a 3-speed automatic, but later also available with a 5-speed manual. And the facelift of 1982 eventually also brought a 4-speed automatic instead of the 3-speed automatic transmission. It all started with the 630 CS being the least powerful engine, available between 1976 and 1979. This was a 3-liter inline-6 which was carbureted and had 182 horsepower and 255 Nm of torque, giving the car a top speed of 210 km an hour and a 0 to 100 time of at the time already very good 8.9 seconds. Because of this car being carbureted, the fuel efficiency wasn't that good at 11.4 liters per 100 kilometers. The car at the same time also offered the 633 CSI, available between 1976 and 1979, and this was a 3.2 liter inline-6, but was fuel injected, giving the car a bit more power at 197 horsepower and 284 Nm of torque, giving the car also a higher top speed of 215 km an hour and a 0 to 100 time of 7.9 seconds, while having a better fuel efficiency of 11 liters per 100 kilometers. The top of the line at the time was the 635 CSI, available between 1978 and 1985. It was a 3.5 liter inline-6 which was fuel injected and only was available with a 5-speed manual or a 3-speed automatic. And this engine had 215 horsepower, 310 Nm of torque having a top speed of 222 km an hour and a 0 to 100 time of 7.6 seconds. Oddly enough, this car's fuel efficiency was 10 liters per 100 kilometers, which was better than the smaller engines. In 1979, the engines changed a bit, with the new smallest engine becoming the 628 CSI with fuel injection, replacing the 630 CS, which was carbureted. In 1979, the 630 CSI was introduced, which was a 2.8 liter inline 6, fuel injected this time, and was available between 1979 and 1987. It had 181 horsepower, 240 Nm of torque and a top speed of 208 km an hour, giving the car a 0 to 100 time of 9.3 seconds and an average fuel consumption of 12 liters per 100 kilometers. The 633 Ci also changed a bit, now from 197 to 194 horsepower and from 284 to 285 Nm. The rest basically stayed the same. 3 years later, in 1982, a new top-of-the-line got introduced, the 635 CSI, which also was, as said before, available earlier, but this time it was more powerful than ever. It had the same 3.5 liter inline 6 with 215 horsepower and 310 Nm, but now had a top speed of 229 km an hour and a 0 to 100 time of 7.4 seconds instead of 7.6 seconds. Fuel efficiency actually worsened quite a lot, as fuel efficiency was 11.7 liters per 100 kilometers instead of the 10.3 liters per 100 kilometers the previous engine had, which was available up until 1985, from 1978. You also had a sport gearbox available for this engine, improving the 0 to 100 time to even 7.2 seconds. And in 1987, a catalytic converter became available for the 635 CSI, being available between 1987 and 1989. Power changed drastically, as the same 3.5 liter inline 6 now had 182 horsepower instead of the 215 horsepower it had. Torque also changed to 290 Nm of torque instead of 310, and the top speed was 217 km an hour instead of 229. 0 to 100 time also worsened at 8.3 seconds instead of 7.4, and the fuel efficiency actually got pretty much the same, as it was around 10.3 liters per 100 kilometers. Besides these engines, there also were engines for the North American market, which were less powerful due to emission regulations, and engines for the Japanese market, but these were actually quite comparable to the specifications of the European engines. Besides these, normal engines, you also had high performance models, such as the M635 CSI, available between 1983 and 1989, basically being available only for the second version of the 6 series or the facelift. This had a 3.5 liter inline 6, being the M88 engine, having 282 horsepower, 340 Nm of torque, and achieving a top speed of 255 km an hour and a 0 to 100 time of 6.4 seconds. Fuel efficiency wise, this wasn't actually that terrible, as fuel efficiency was 11.3 liters per 100 kilometers. And also just like with the other engine in 1987, you also received the M635 CSI with catalytic converter in 1987. This engine had 256 horsepower, basically being the same position the other catalytic converter engine was in, as it had just less power than the other engine. It had 330 Nm of torque, achieving a top speed lower at 242 km an hour and a 0 to 100 time of 6.9 seconds, while also worsening the fuel efficiency up to 11.9 liters per 100 kilometers. You also had some special versions beside this performance-oriented model, and this basically was mostly for the North American market and some other engines and some other cars as well. For the North American market, an L6, basically being the luxury edition version of the 635 CSI, was available for the 1987 model year. And the L6 featured leather headliner and trim and an automatic gearbox. Also exterior wise, the 6 series was different in the US. The extended bumpers required by US crash legislation resulted in US models having an increased length of approximately 18 centimeters to 4 meters and 92 centimeters. Although other markets offered multiple E24 models, in North America, the only model available at any given time aside from the M6 were the 633 and 635 CSI. In 1986, North America and Japan received their equivalent of the M635 CSI, called the M6. The main difference between the M6 and its European counterpart is simply the fact that the S38 engine is used in the American cars instead of the M88. Compared to the M88, the S38 has a catalytic converter, the compression ratio reduced to 9.8 to 1, and a double row timing chain, a shorter camshaft duration and a simplified exhaust manifold. Standard equipment on the US market, M6 cars included many features which were optional on European cars, including heated power seats, self-leveling rear suspension, a beverage chiller cooled by an air conditioning system between the rear seats, as well as air conditioning vents for the rear occupants, and a 6-speeder premium sound system. The M6 for the USA got powered, as said before, by the S38 engine, which was also a 3.5-liter inline-6, but with a catalytic converter, producing 256 horsepower and 330 Nm, having a top speed of 240 km an hour and a 0 to 100 time of 6.2 seconds. Fuel efficiency wise, this car had a fuel efficiency of 16.8 liters per 100 kilometers. And the car that succeeded it was the 1987 to 1989 M6, which was also a 3.5-liter inline-6 with catalytic converter, having basically the same power, although a somewhat higher top speed of 242 km an hour, but having a 0 to 100 time even worse of 7.1 seconds, but also the fuel efficiency worsened to 18.1 liters per 100 kilometers. Several tuning companies also offered enhanced versions of the E24, such as Alpina with its B7 Turbo, B7S Turbo, the B9 and B10. The B7 Turbo was available between 1978 and 1988, and this basically was a 3-liter inline-6 with a turbo, producing 295 horsepower and 462 Nm of torque, giving the car a top speed of 250 km an hour, a 0 to 100 time of 6.8 seconds, while having an average fuel efficiency of 12.6 liters per 100 kilometers. Around 194 units were made, and also the Alpina B7S Turbo Coupé was made, basically being an enhanced version made in 1982. You also had a 3-liter inline-6 with this, having 326 horsepower, 500 Nm of torque, and having a top speed of 262 km an hour. Also, the 0 to 100 time was much better than the other B7 Turbo at 5.8 seconds per hour. And the fuel efficiency, weirdly enough, was better than with the other B7 Turbo, as it was 12.2 liters per 100 kilometers. This engine and this configuration was less desirable as only 30 units were made. And between 1986 and 1987, also a B7 Turbo Coupé with catalytic converter was available, with a comparable power output to the B7S Turbo and with 44 units made. Between 1981 and 1987, you also had the Alpina B9 3.5 Coupé, having a 3.4-liter inline-6, basically being 20 cc smaller than the 635 CSI, having 241 horsepower, 320 Nm of torque, and having a top speed of 240 km an hour. The 0 to 100 time was 6.9 seconds, and fuel efficiency wise it was actually quite decent at 12 liters per 100 kilometers. And this was the most successful model with 577 units made. You also had the B10, which was made between 1985 and 1987, and this basically also had a 3.4-liter inline-6, being a bit more powerful at 257 horsepower, 345 Nm and a top speed of 250 km an hour, all while having a improved 0 to 100 time of 6.4 seconds, and an average fuel consumption of 11.3 liters per 100 kilometers, also being better than the B9. And of this, also only 44 units were made. Between 1976 and 1989, a total of 86,216 E24 units were produced. Notably, the M635 CSI had a production run of 5,855 units, which actually is quite a lot, 1,767 of which were for the North American market and 524 right-hand drive cars for the United Kingdom. During its production, the E24 competed with other luxury Grand Tourers, such as the Mercedes-Benz SLC C107, the Jaguar XJS, known for its V12 engine and refined ride, and the Porsche 928, featured a front-mounted V8 and advanced technology. And the E24 basically was succeeded in the 6 Series name by the E63 in 2003, but coupe-wise it was succeeded by the E31 8 Series in 1989, which introduced a more modern design and advanced technology. However, the E31 is considered a separate model line as it was the 8 Series nameplate. Thanks for watching this video. In order to be able to upload more videos in the future, please consider becoming a member on my channel or sending a super thanks on this video. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe for more. Don't forget to check out this playlist with many interesting videos covering various parts of the automotive industry, and I will see you in the next video.